All right, so we are recording this. We'll see if it works this time. It didn't work yesterday. Try. See you later. But we'll see if we can get it going today. So excretory system, right? There's one main component of our excretory system that we really focus on. That's our kidneys, right? With the functional unit of our kidneys being the nephron. We have millions of nephrons. The nephrons are the small little filtration units within our kidneys. So the other components in our focus today is really just the structure, function, and how the excretory system is regulated and what the excretory system regulates. So we'll get there. Other components of our excretory system, though: skin, lungs, right? We are excreting water. You're excreting salt through your skin. Your lungs are excreting carbon dioxide. Right. So they're also a component of our excretory system. But again, we're mainly focused on the kidneys. Just looking at kind of evolutionary history, both the AP exam and the SAT2 exam love to talk about this stuff. Okay? The excretory system, right? Our kidneys, their main job is to filter out nitrogenous waste. Where do we produce nitrogenous waste? The breakdown of what? What has a lot of nitrogen?
DNA.
Nope. DNA has some. Yep. DNA has some, but we don't have a ton of DNA compared to other things in our body. So yes, some come from DNA. What else has nitrogen? Nope. No. Proteins, amino acids, an amine group, right? NH2, right? So proteins, right? That's where we develop we get our nitrogenous waste from the breakdown of our proteins. So we have a lot of proteins in our body. We're constantly building, breaking down. That's where we generate the bulk of our nitrogenous waste. Now, is some going to be yes? They would be some. Okay. Nitrogenous waste in its purest form comes in the form of ammonia. All right. Ammonia is NH3. Right. So basically, when I break down that amine group, and hydrogen can be added, and we have ammonia. Ammonia is toxic. Right. Ammonia is a cleaning solution. You do not want to drink ammonia, right? You do not want to have ammonia floating through your blood. It is highly, highly toxic, okay? So we don't excrete ammonia. We actually take that ammonia and we convert it into a less toxic water-soluble compound known as urea. Urea is the main component of urine, right? And that's what we get rid of. Aquatic organisms, though, don't need to waste that energy. It takes energy to produce urea, right? If you're an aquatic organism, though, you live in an environment that you can easily allow the ammonia compounds to diffuse directly into the water. So you don't need to waste that energy in the production of urea. So aquatic organisms will excrete ammonia. Many mammals will excrete urea. Reptiles, birds, insects secrete uric acid. Now, the question I just kind of finally realized, like, well, why do they excrete uric acid? Like, why don't they just excrete urea? It actually takes more energy to produce uric acid than it does to produce urea. So what's the advantage? Like, why would you produce uric acid if you could produce urea and just get rid of it? Because urea is actually water-soluble, less toxic. Uric acid is not water-soluble. Uric acid precipitates in water. And what it has to do with the egg. We, mammals, have the ability when they're developing, their nitrogenous waste is filtered out by the mother. So you have a nice filtration system going on. Right? A chicken doesn't have that luxury. The chicken is locked in what? In an egg. If they're producing urea, although it's less toxic, in high concentrations, it can be very toxic, right? So therefore, if you're an egg in a locked environment and you're producing urea, urea is going to dissolve into all the fluids of the egg and could become toxic to the developing embryo, the developing bird. Uric acid precipitates out, it forms solids. It doesn't really dissolve into the fluid. So that's the reason why. It actually takes more energy to produce uric acid. The other things I just like to mention, the the kind of precursor to our nephron is what's known as a nephridia. We find them in earthworms, very similar to our nephron, just kind of like a little bit more of a primitive form. Malpighian tubes are really the tubes, the functional tubes in insects producing uric acid, and then our functional units are nephrons. Speaking of nephrons, right, let's take a look at one. There are a couple key components here. Here's our kidney. Right, our kidney filters about 180 liters of blood every day. A lot. That's almost 90 gallons of water goes through your kidneys every day that gets filtered. Our kidney plays a major role with homeostasis. Obviously, getting rid of nitrogenous waste is the main function of this, but it also plays a role with pH. It can allow hydrogen ions to be excreted or kept, controlling the pH of your blood. It also controls salt concentrations. It also controls blood volume, therefore blood pressure. All of this is controlled by the kidneys. When we're looking at this, right, if your kidney stops filtering water, stops taking water out of your blood and producing urine, what's going to happen to your blood volume? It's going to go up. Therefore, what happens to your blood pressure? It goes up. If we start taking more water out, we're decreasing blood volume. What happens to your blood pressure? It drops. Okay, very good. So it regulates all that. It also regulates pH. I'll kind of show the mechanism for pH in a little bit. Nothing too crazy. The ureter is what's actually carrying urine to the urinary bladder. The ureter is going to be connected to what's known as our collection ducts. Our functional unit is known as the nephron. This is a nephron right here. And again, in each one of our kidneys, we have millions of them in each one of our kidneys. With our nephron, a couple key components, right? We have a glomerulus and a Bowman's capsule. That's this little unit right here. The glomerulus is a group of capillaries, a ball of capillaries. The Bowman's capsule is kind of this capsule around it that's going to collect material. It's kind of like a collection system. We have a whole tubule system. That Bowman's capsule is connected to a tubule system that we basically, and you'll see this in a minute or two. We have what's known as the proximal tubule, the tubule that's closest, the loop of Henle. There's the little loop down here. Right? And then our distal tubule, which eventually goes to our collection duct. Notice the tubule system is very much entwined with our capillary system. So you can kind of see there's a lot of interaction between the tubule system and the capillary system. And okay. Here's a better look at our nephron. Here is our afferent arteriole coming in, which makes this the efferent arteriole. That's where you really see afferent. Again, we kind of mentioned the neurons, but that's where we see it. You can kind of see shaded inside. You can see the glomerulus. Around it, you can see the Bowman's capsule, and you can see how the Bowman capsule is connected to this tubule system. Okay, this would be proximal, closest. This is distal, further away. This is the descending loop of Henle. This is the ascending loop of Henle, right? Goes down and goes up. Okay, this seems a little strange, but how many people have cleaned out the refrigerators before? You've never cleaned the refrigerator?
Might have.
Right, okay. All right. How do we clean out our refrigerator? What do we do first? Take out everything. Then we wash it down. And then we do what? Not everything, just the good stuff, right? Not the milk that expired 3 weeks ago was curdling. We're going to throw that away, right? But any good milk or any good stuff we're going to put back. That is the perfect analogy for how our kidneys function. At that glomerulus into your tubule system, basically everything kind of filters out of your blood. Not everything, but a lot of materials all filter out of your capillary system into the glomerulus. So water's leaving the capillaries, sugars are leaving the capillaries, proteins are leaving the capillaries, urea is leaving the capillaries, salts, ions, right? All the materials are all leaving the capillaries and getting into the tubule system. As all that filtrate goes through the tubule system, all the good stuff is reabsorbed, is taken from the tubule system back into your capillaries, back into your bloodstream. Whatever is not reabsorbed ends up going through the entire tubular system and ends up in the collection duct, eventually going to your bladder for excretion. That's it. That's kind of how the kidney works. Now, there's another little component here is this. We break it down to filtration, reabsorption, and then secretion. There are some materials that don't really filter out well. So as your capillaries are moving in conjunction with your tubular system, there are some materials that we actively secrete from your capillaries, from your blood into your tubular system. Things such as hydrogen ions, potassium, and other type of ions are actively secreted out. You can see by pumping out these hydrogen ions, by having a high level or low level, that can control our pH. Okay. So there's three things, right? The filtration, reabsorption, and then anything that has not or does not have the ability to filter out that we need to get rid of, we actively secrete it out of our blood into the tubular system. So here's kind of a good picture of the process. Here's our glomerulus, right, where filtration occurs. So what we're looking at here is we're looking at the tubular system. So these arrows pointing out, those arrows are highlighting reabsorption. So here, salt is being reabsorbed, water is being reabsorbed, salt, water, glucose is being reabsorbed, amino acids are being reabsorbed, yes. Reabsorbed from the tubular system back into your capillaries. So remember, your capillaries are entwined with the tubular system. So I would say reabsorb. When you're leaving the tubules, they're being absorbed into the tissues, into your bloodstream, into your capillaries. Couple things here. The blue is water. This is actually really kind of considered a passive transport. The salt is really active transport. We are actively pumping salt out. That's it. I mean, that's the major function of our kidney. I have a few more details we need to talk about, but yes. So no, not intuition. So basically, what's going to happen is, proteins, glucose, they're large. If they're not necessarily going to be able to pass through membranes, they're going to have to pass through specific protein channels. And there's going to be protein channels designed to allow those to pass through our others. Protein channels are molecule specific. So that's the easy answer. And then really it comes down to is, the glucose is a charged carbohydrate. It has to have the right type of mixture between the charges to allow it to pass through. Okay, so this is the main process here. One of the key things we need to reabsorb is water. Right? We don't want to lose water. We want to conserve our water. So this countercurrent exchange, another example of countercurrent exchange, is the mechanism for reabsorbing water. It's oftentimes called the countercurrent exchange multiplier because we're multiplying, we're increasing concentration. All right. So countercurrent exchange, you can see how it's going to kind of happen between the descending, ascending loop of Henle and the collection duct because they're all kind of going in opposite directions of one another. This is how it operates. It's really pretty simple. It operates on osmolarity. Osmolarity is simply just concentration. But instead of saying like grams per liter, it's saying moles per liter, right? It's just concentration by particles. So when I say osmolarity, we're just saying concentrations. What happens is this. Your fluid in your tubular system is traveling down the descending loop of Henle, traveling back up. In the ascending loop of Henle, there are protein pumps there that are being activated. They are actively pumping salt out of your tubular system. When they pump salt out of the tubular system into the surrounding tissues and the surrounding capillaries, they're creating an environment with high salt concentrations. Does nature like high concentrations? No, nature likes equilibrium. So in order to combat the high salt concentrations, what's going to happen with your water? Osmosis, right? If I create environments with high salt concentrations, you're going to have environments where water's trying to move in very quickly. Water's trying to lower that concentration. So By pumping the salt out, it's creating a mechanism for water reuptake. So we're pumping salt out, we're creating high concentrations of salt, and when we do that, we're creating a mechanism that allows for the passive transport of water. Again, the red arrows are active transport, the blue arrows are passive movement of water, just trying to reach equilibrium. You can see how this is happening not only in the descending loop, the ascending loop is really how the mechanism functioning, but also you also get reuptake of water in the tubular system as well. What does that do? It conserves water, it concentrates urea. So it maximizes, it concentrates your urine. That's it. That's the key. It's really those three things. Filtration, reabsorption, and secretion, right? Anything that's not filtered out that we need to actively secrete out, we secrete it out of our blood into the tubular system, and then kind of the reuptake of water and how countercurrent exchange and osmolarity plays a role in that. The active pumping out of our salts causing the reuptake of our water. One last thing, which is not in the slide, and it's kind of our first foray into the endocrine system, is ADH. Antidiuretic hormone. Antidiuretic hormone, ADH, targets why am I losing the word I'm looking for? Something can pass through, penetrate. Permeability. Thank you. Tubule permeability. So that's what ADH does. ADH targets the tubule system, makes it more permeable to water. So when you release ADH, it makes your tubule system more permeable. Right? If your tubule system is more permeable to water, it means water is an easier method to move back into your bloodstream. So if our tubule system becomes permeable, water is going to have an easier time moving from your tubule system back into your capillaries. If you release ADH, do you have to go to the bathroom more or go to the bathroom less? More. Less. If I release ADH, what happens is it's allowing more water to leave your tubule system and go back to your capillaries. So when you release ADH, you have to go to the bathroom less. A major chemical that affects ADH production. Alcohol, right? When you drink alcohol, you tend to urinate more. You urinate more because you might drink large quantities of alcohol, which is not a good thing. But the other thing that happens is alcohol targets the production of ADH. It stops ADH function. Therefore, if it targets ADH and stops its function, it means that you are letting less water be absorbed back into your bloodstream, which causes more urine to go to your bladder, causes you to urinate more. Hence, drinking causes you to become dehydrated. So that's our first foray into the endocrine system. That's a key hormone to be aware of. That's a mechanism that you will see.